You know what? There is enough positivity in this space generated around attempting to sell you the next game coming to Kickstarter. So let's ditch the positivity for this video and instead focus on the games we absolutely hate. So rather than list off a bunch of games you don't know and can't buy or crap on some guy who is self-publishing his baby, I'm going to make a hard rule that the game must appear on the Board Game Geek Top 5,000 games. And none of the usual suspects here like Catan or Munchkin or Monopoly. Oh, and if you're a publisher, please stop watching and do not blacklist us. We love you. It's only natural to start with the game that inspired this list, which is Votes for Women. Votes for Women is a card-driven game covering the women's suffrage movement in America. Imagine Twilight Struggle. Okay, do you have that in your mind? Okay, now imagine if you stripped that game of everything that provided it depth and enjoyment and just added random dice rolls. Game of the year. I did a tier list for 2022 games and I just dunked on this game because I despised it. I really, really hate it. And the praise it received just freaking dumbfounded me. I was searching around the forums like crazy trying to find another kindred spirit that saw this game for the sort of lazy mess of a design and boring experience that it was, and I couldn't find anything. I challenge you right now, go check out the reviews on this game and try to find reviewers actually praising the mechanics of this game and not just the historical significance of the theme. All of them let's babble on about the history of the period, provide like flowery prose and almost no mention of the nitty-gritty of the mechanics of this game. And there is a damn good reason why. They suck. So it's a card-driven game, much like Making of the President, right? You play the card for its effect, discard for some buttons, or discard it to roll some stupid dice. And the buttons you get from the card isn't like the typical action point system you find in most of these games. Instead of carefully deciding how much and where to campaign, I just roll 2 dice. Or, maybe you want to use that card to petition Congress. Well, to do that, you roll a 6 and you did it. Congress gets its ass petitioned. But you know what the best part of this game is? It's the big dramatic climax, where if the game lasts longer than 6 turns, which it typically does, you might just get the opportunity to experience a roll-off for each individual state. Yeah, that's right, a game made in 2022 that features a bloody roll-off to win the game. You essentially undo and make redundant all the hard work you put into the game in the first place, leaving you to feel that I guess the suffragette movement was just like total random bullshit, which doesn't seem like the best message for the game to convey. In the entire game, you're just hoping for okay cards and good dice rolls and wondering if you're even playing a game at all, or if you've warped back in time to when you were a kid playing Game of Life with your family. I get that the theme has historical significance, but the game it's attached to is a steaming pile of dog crap. It's just a dreadfully boring and simple game. Every given turn had me cycling through what was the most obvious decisions possible. I'm all for taking a game of Twilight Struggle and sort of like distilling it into an experience that's something a bit more palatable for people. But man, this game, it just missed the mark. And hell, does Votes for Women even capture its historical premise and make you think? No, it doesn't at all. You don't play as a single suffragette fighting for your rights. You're some sort of like suffragette master commander rolling dice and placing cubes. You feel nothing playing the game because you represent nothing. It's so heavily abstracted from its theme that it feels like it was made by a history teacher for his class to remember and regurgitate key names and dates on a test. I'll see this game sitting on the shelves in some content creators' videos and I refuse to believe there are people out there that genuinely enjoy playing this game regularly. I legitimately think at this point, it's like this strange conversation piece. I could picture a dude who is single inviting a woman over to his place, showing her his board game collection, as you do, and then sort of leaning on his shelf and saying see this, baby? That's right. I support your right to vote. We do sex now? Yeah, it's a crappy game. 2 out of 10. And next we have Steam Up, A Feast of Dim Sum. Steam Up, A Feast of Dim Sum sees players taking actions like gaining and spending food tokens to purchase cute dim sum steamers and play fortune cards to benefit themselves. Nothing matters in this game at all. Just look at the cool steamers and pretend there's a game attached to those steamers. This is a game Kim demanded we try because she loves dim sum and I don't know, she's Asian. So I suppose she thought that the ethnicity police would just show up to her house and take away her Asian card if she didn't enjoy the game. With the cute little bamboo steamers. I'm guessing anyway. She didn't tell me that. You'll have to ask her. Sadly, after playing my buddy's deluxe version of this game, this really is just another boring set collection game. There were legit moments in this game where I had to pause and sort of ask myself, is this it? Please tell me there is more to this game than just this. Everything just felt so damn random and uninteresting. I think to call this a family game would be a disservice to families everywhere. This is beyond light, to the point where your turns are just so obvious, which making the entire experience uninteresting and just unengaging. Like, the randomness is sometimes just so overwhelming because it feels as though you can't really plan anything, and the game provides no method of adapting tactically on a turn to accommodate for that randomness, especially at higher player counts. It feels like a bloody mess every single turn. And the player powers just don't feel balanced at all. Like, you have these determined powers like the dog or the tiger, but then also powers like the monkey that are just pure randomness, and sometimes the powers are not even useful when the time comes to actually make use of them. No game ever felt like this tight, tension-filled race. Someone almost always took each game handedly, leaving everyone else at the table just sort of dumbfounded and wondering why they're there. And that's fine in a game with really interesting and strategic decisions, but when it feels like your opponent is just sitting on Lady Luck's lap, it's a little annoying. All this to say that with all the asymmetric play on the rise in gaming these days, this game provides a wonderful example to designers on what not to do. The whole damn thing just left me thinking, who is this game for? Because if you want a light family game, there are hundreds. There are probably thousands of light games that do whatever Steam Up is attempting to accomplish significantly better. 3 out of 10. And next up, we have the gateway game that somehow managed to bring people into this hobby instead of making them turn around running and screaming. Smash Up. Smash Up is a dueling card game where players combine different wacky factions together to crush the most bases possible, all in the game that takes way more time than it deserves and makes you actually hate all the cool art and theme you would have loved when you were an 8-year-old little boy. This is one of those games that I understand requires playing it a lot to really know the faction decks. The problem is before you even get to that point, because I've played this probably a dozen times, and the entire experience always felt like such a slog. Instead of the exciting beat 'em up I was expecting, it sucked. Damn, the downtime in this game is a bloody nightmare. We play this at 4, probably most of the time, and it's just, the game lasted forever. Now, I'm all for meme games. In fact, I prefer meme games, but I feel like this is it's more akin to Munchkin in its meanness, where it just feels like this constant, unfun crabs in a bucket scenario every single game, where you feel like you're taking a step forward only to have a few people make you take 3 steps back. And then it just makes the game drag on a lot longer than it has any right to. And because there are so many expansions in this game, anytime I play this game, someone is loading their box with more and more content. Now, normally that in a game that's fine, just requires a bit of learning. But honestly, the more I play, the more I find things to be incredibly unbalanced, and there are just some really crappy factions in this game. And it's not just that, but every expansion seems to add endless waves of tokens and just utter random garbage. The entire experience just became more and more tedious every time I played. Trying to remember what all of the crap does on any given turn was just way too exhausting, and typically the powers that it did add they were not fun for me to tolerate all that overhead. The game strategy pretty much just comes from the faction selection. Once you're finished that, there is no more strategy. After that, it's just all tactics and adapting to what other players are doing. But holy hell is this game swingy. The board states sometimes become so chaotic every single turn that it just feels unfulfilling. The game provided no opportunity sometimes to set something up in between turns. And add that to the fact that you just feel powerless when it's not your turn, and you have no interest in other people's turns, because there are not many cards that can be played that can directly mess with them on their turn. So you just kind of sit there and you hope that you just don't get destroyed. I guess that's the only way the game can foster some semblance of interest between turns. But out of every game on this list, I do understand why some would enjoy this game specifically. I think this one might anger the most people because I know that while it is old, there are a lot of gamers who were brought into this hobby through Smash Up. But it's certainly not for me. I look forward to never having to recalculate base points ever again. 2 out of 10. So my hatred for Smash Up actually leads beautifully into the next game, Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a cooperative game where you pick a hero and then battle a villain with your buddies using special abilities and the power of friendship. But ultimately, it's a game designed for those who thought Excel spreadsheets could maybe make a pretty rad game if you just added poorly drawn comic book characters to the equation. So you thought the bookkeeping in Smash Up was bad? Well, Sentinels pushes that mind-numbing, irritating dial right up to 11. Sentinels is what I imagine it would be like to be Batman, but during tax season. I loathe Sentinels. It's a game I purchased quite a long time ago now, and the more I played the game, the more I started to hate it from the bottom of my soul. I really wanted to like it. I did. I gave it so many chances. Your choices in the game are they're always so obvious. But the worst part is the bookkeeping. It feels less like a board game and more like I'm organizing some poorly slapped together spreadsheet written in a different language. The play itself is super simple. You play a card from one of the 4 in your hand and you choose a hero power. That part can be mildly enjoyable despite how simple the entire process feels and sort of lacking any real depth. The primary problem though is the villains. Villains typically have a lot of text on their cards, and you have to pay really close attention to all the instructions on their turn. And right after that, you go through all of the cards they've played to see for things like, start of turn text and other instructions. Then you draw another villain card and you apply its effects to the table state. And once you finish that, you'll need to take a look at the end of turn effects. And with all out of the way, you're ready to wrap it all up by reducing the asset's capital cost with a total in part 3C at line 8230. On this channel, we talk time and time again in regards to medium and lighter games on how low complexity does not have to equal low strategy or depth. Here, you have a game that feels relatively light in how it's played and somewhat shallow given the amount of tedious complexity the game throws your way. Like many cooperative games, there is no human opponent, and so all you're doing is trying to solve a puzzle, and that puzzle in this game is not particularly interesting or engaging because it feels so damn one-dimensional where the entirety of the focus is most of the time it's just on damage, whether it's mitigating it or doing damage yourself. There's not a lot of sneaky positioning tricks or interesting status effects, although that would add to the tediousness, I guess, or anything that just feels remotely strategic or fun. Yeah, I hate you, Sentinels. I hate you. 2 out of 10. After giving this game the Dumpster of the Year award in my tier list for 2024 games, I thought maybe I was missing something or that I was just too hard on the game, since a lot of the commenters came to its defense. I started playing the game a lot more on Board Game Arena, a lot more. And it actually never got better. It never got better. It just got worse. I am, of course, talking about Harvest. In Harvest, you take on the role of a farmer, each with your own bland power, drafting sunrise cards and taking your wheelbarrow around town to gather resources, plant seeds, tend the land, and do a variety of other actions that mostly just kind of feel the same until the end of the game and you wonder why you even bothered playing. I think a lot of people will come at least maybe a little closer to my opinion on this game as this game ages. This is not a game people will be playing a few years down the road. Hell, people certainly were not playing the original Harvest. So this entry will likely draw in, I guess, the most anger because it's the latest hotness. But what's funny is that most of the criticism seems to center on this being a light family game. And hey, that's great. These types of games are important. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of games that do worker placement, just worker placement, better and are still palatable for your average family gamer. My issue with the game is how bloody bland and derivative it is. It feels like a stripped down worker placement game in the worst possible way. The actions themselves, beyond being fundamentally simple, they're so incredibly samey. There are very few things you can do in this game, and yet some of the actions end up just repeating themselves. And while that might be okay in a game like Agricola or Caverna, it's not okay when there's 6 actions that you can perform in any given game. And the player powers are exactly what designers need to avoid doing when it comes to implementing asymmetric abilities. The powers of your characters should not feel as though you're railroading your players into a very specific strategy. It's boring. Anytime you take away player agency, you better have a damn good reason for it. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Leland the Frog, but letting me start my bucket at a 6th space of water instead of the 3rd space of water, it's not fun and it's not interesting. Do you know how sometimes you'll watch a Hallmark movie and although it's not the worst movie of all time, you still get a little angry at how bland and unoriginal the film is, and you begin to begin to despise it for purposely being so manipulative. The exact part the film is telling you to cry or to laugh, and over time it just becomes obnoxious. That to me is Harvest. I can tell this game wants me to think it's some sort of like cute and cozy game, but it's not. It's bad, and it is boring, and it's a 3 out of 10. And that's my list. I know you hate me now, and you're upset that I just trashed a game you probably enjoy, but don't worry, I'm just one man with an opinion. I feel with content creators these days, everything is just so overly positive. And while I certainly appreciate positivity, it's important to be a little real and brutal sometimes. You know, if you're passionate about something, as I am with board games, and as you are with board games, well, that passion, it kind of goes both ways. And I think denying you guys one side of that passion, it seems a little dishonest. You know, our goal with this channel has always been to treat you, the viewer, as if you were a friend who just sort of wandered into our house and demanded we start talking about a game we played. And with that perspective comes a very candid and sometimes colorful opinion on games. There's no PR speak here, okay? We're never making a review video or list video to sell you something. We do this because it's fun. And honestly, I hate to admit it, sometimes even trashing games is kind of fun sometimes. So hopefully nobody's too offended by this. It was kind of fun to make. Let me know in the comment section what you disagree with, or if you think there are games that you hate most. I want to hear about them, but no, none of the usual stuff like Munchkin and Catan. Give me some really juicy ones that a lot of people love. That's what I want to hear. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Bye.